Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Francis, and we are here doing algebra questions that have been requested by our students. Okay, so let's start. Today we're going to talk about I. What is I? I is a number, right? We're learning a new number today. What does I represent? I equals the square root of -1. Okay, so all of us should be familiar with what the square root is, right? We've went over used it several times in other problems, right? So the square root of -1 is I. And how do we use this? Well, for example, sometimes they want us to write expressions in terms of I. That means whenever we have a negative square root, we can simply factor out the square root of -1, and we can go ahead and take the roots. So let's do it. Let's see an example. So for this one, we have the square root of -4, right? So we're going to write this as we're going to factor out the -1. So we're going to have -4 equals 4 times a -1. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and separate those two factors, right? We're going to get square root of 4 times the square root of -1. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to simplify each one. We just learned that the square root of -1 is I. So we're going to go ahead and simplify this and make it an I. And then the square root of 4 is 2. So we're going to simplify that factor and make it 2. So our answer is going to be simply 2I. All right? So that's how that works. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the next problem, which is square root of -11. So let's go ahead and do the same procedure. We're going to factor out that negative. Remember, we're keeping everything under the square root symbol, right? So it's going to be 11 times -1, all underneath the square root. And then we're going to separate, right, the factors, keeping them under the square root. So square root of 11 times the square root of -1. And now we're going to simplify. Well, square root of 11 is not a perfect square, so it just stays as is, right? And then the square root of -1 we know is that new number, I. So we're going to go ahead and write that to get it into I format. So the answer here is I square root of 11. All right, now let's go to the next one. Uh, Square root of -28, right? We're going to follow the same procedure. We're going to factor underneath the square root symbol. So under here, we're going to say 28 times, that's multiplication, -1, right? But we notice that 28 has more factors, right? And we see that we can factor out a perfect, one of the factors of 28 is a perfect square. So if we factor it out even further, we can go 28 is equal to 4 times 7, right? And then we still have the -1 there. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to separate our factors, right? So we have square root of 4 times the square root of 7 times the square root of -1. We all know this by now that square root of -1 is going to give us I, right? Square root of 7 is not a perfect square, so we're going to leave it as is, right? And then the square root of 4 is going to be 2. So we put this together, we're going to go 2 times I times the square root of 7, which would be our answer. Okay. Now note, whenever we have a square root and an I always put the I in front of the square root because if you put it on the other side like this, it could look like it's underneath the square root, and then that would be incorrect. So just to make sure that it's clear that the I is not underneath the square root, whenever you get an I with a square root in your answer, just put the I in front of the square root, like we did here and here. Okay. All right, so I hope that helps. Okay, if it did, please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next question. Have a great day.